Today we are talking with our president-elect candidates that are on the ballot for the July election. And this is an all-membership vote. So this is for if you have membership in AHIMA and you are concerned or excited about the future of the health information profession, then you're going to want to listen to the candidates that we're going to talk to today. Today we have with us Thea Campbell. Hi, Thea. Welcome. Very good. I guess at the beginning of this, let's do a quick disclaimer that we are not the voice of AHIMA. We're not representing AHIMA, either HIPcast podcasters or the president-elect candidates that we're talking to today. These are all just our own views and decisions. And so this is not an AHIMA ordained or, whatever. This is just podcast. This is HIPcast, right? Yeah, not yet. We're going to have some good conversations about what's important about the presidency of such a membership or organization, and then kind of the future. Excited.
Yeah, it's a big role, and it's going to be a fun conversation to get to learn about the candidates. And Thea, our first question is always to our guest and to our candidates now that we're doing this year is, tell us about your HI journey. How did you end up in this profession that we call health information?
I think everybody has a unique journey. And first of all, I just need to say my career in health information has just been incredibly rewarding, and I feel incredibly blessed for that. I would love to tell you I woke up one morning and said I wanted to be an HIM professional. And I think it's so wonderful that many more stories these days are that we have more awareness in the profession and people are journeying into it. But that was not mine. I had started out looking at clinical nursing. I wanted to be a nurse. I happened to grow up in Duluth, Minnesota, right at where the College of St. Scholastica is, very ironically, and kind of couldn't figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up, and actually had a dear friend who had a roommate in college who went into HIM. And I remember the night that I asked her, we were night auditors. I said, well, what does Laura do? That's a 2-year degree, right? And she said, no, it's a 4-year degree. And like I said, great fortune being right there at the College of St. Scholastica, and sort of started down that journey of patient care is not my thing. I love helping patients, but I don't have that kind of bone in terms of being able to do that clinical care. So that's kind of how I started. So I went to the College of St. Scholastica, had the great fortune of having some really great mentors who were there at the college and got me connected with Monica Pappas and Shirley Eichenwald, who was a teacher at Scholastica, but who had left at that time. And after I graduated from college, took a big adventure and moved out to California. I teased that being from Minnesota, I thought that was going to be really glamorous and really exciting. And the directions to my first house in Central California was go to the apple orchard, take a right when you see a horse. And so it was a little bit of a misnomer for me, but had the fortune of being in just a really wonderful professional position where I got to grow. So I got to do a bunch of consulting, got to do some of that junior consulting work where you really dug into different pieces. And there was a lot of change going on in HIM. Obviously, my educational background paper still existed in great quantity when I graduated from college, but there was the future of, electronic medical records. And so got to learn a lot, traveled all over the country, did a ton of consulting and revenue cycle, worked with an outsourcing company. So we were able to kind of take staff from hospitals and focus in on HIM and making sure that their performance is what the hospital needed, and kind of take it outside of the traditional metrics within a hospital. And then just kind of evolved, bounced around in several different buy sells of consulting firms, and landed at Cedars-Sinai now over 19 years ago. And was working with someone who I had met as part of my consulting career. And she asked me to stay and help her sort of transform health information at Cedars-Sinai. And my response to her, because at the time I was on the road consultant, was as long as I don't have to solve the same problem twice. Fast forward 19 years, and I'm still here, and I haven't solved the same problem twice. I was very fortunate early in my career. I was granted an executive director, which was pretty amazing at 30 years old to be in that kind of a role at an organization this size. And then here within the last several years, we've done some more centralization, some more work within a health system, and became the vice president of health information, revenue integrity, and compliance, which is really hard to write and really hard to say. But it definitely has been a journey, and all of the things changing within healthcare. I think also as a leader, you change. I look back at some of the things I said and some of the things I did early in my career and go, wow. Sometimes experience is all you got to be able to look at. And again, have been very, very fortunate. I've had some incredible mentors along the way that have really helped me hone. And I'm continuously learning leadership, right? You think you got it figured out, and then you're like, wow, that totally went somewhere else. But have been incredibly blessed within the profession. And a lot of my mentors were the ones who said, you have to serve, you have to give back to the profession. Taking students has always been very important to me. Working with individuals, I actually had one of my executive coach say to me, you believed in this individual when this individual didn't believe in themselves, and you convinced them to see what you saw in them. And those are those moments where you're like, I might have known what I was doing there, right? And a lot of leadership, or you could say a lot of people's success is based on luck. I think a lot of it is intuition. You're doing the right thing for the sake of doing the right thing. And then you have the fortune as you age to look back and say, here's the success I had, or here's something I did that I kind of thought might work.
Wonderful journey. And maybe I know we didn't, in preparation for this, we didn't talk about service, although Seth and I always end these conversations with, if you want to understand what's happening in our profession, you should try to volunteer and serve so that but maybe talk a little bit about your service to this profession, whether it be student mentoring or actual volunteerism in your state or local or even at the national level.
I think service can ebb and flow in terms of where you are in your career, where you are in your personal life, right? So service is really about having time or making time, being able to prioritize that. So very early on, again, the fortune of working with some really great mentors. I lived in the state of Colorado and actually was their president of their component association way back when. I mean, it was a long time ago. It was before my son was born, so 19 years ago. And I remember I personally think fumbled my way through that. Thank you to great executive directors of those associations who work tirelessly to make sure that we stay on track. But started some of that connection. I served on the convention committee a couple of years and have also had the fortune of speaking at a lot of different events in a lot of different venues, whether that be locally or at the national level. And so felt that was very important and was always amazed that people wanted to listen to what I had to say about something. And so it's been a lot of time really in that space. And then it started getting more actively involved probably within the last 5 years, again, with our association as things changed, as my role with my organization changed. And I think service is so very important because you do want to shape what you have. You do want to be in the know, So if I look back on when I wasn't as actively engaged as I am now, I was missing things. And part of the struggle in the HI world is there's so much out there and there's so much going on that if you don't have those opportunities where they're being presented to you, that information is being presented to you in a variety of different forms and you don't take advantage of it, you very quickly kind of lose track. You lose track of legislation, you lose track of initiatives that are going on. And so involvement is a bit self-serving for me on that standpoint, in that it kind of keeps me in that know. And that know is really important for my job. And so when people say, hey, my job is all consuming, they are. I tease. We tease that where I work takes 110% and they'll ask you for 10 more. But it is very self-serving in that you are in the know of something like the patient ID week or the work that's going on in that space. And we fight that battle very locally in our health system. IDing patients and to have access to some of that information is great. Same thing with social determinants of health. You work, I was part of the initial white paper right with that. And now seeing that and seeing what's happening with that in our organization and how we're using that data is just really great. And it kind of ties it together. But I think service is multidimensional to the health information profession. Absolutely. We have that commitment. But I really sort of learned more about service. And this is just more as people kind of consider where they want to be involved, I became very active with Boy Scouts of America with my children. So I have 2 Eagle Scout sons, and I have a daughter who has to do her Eagle project, and then she'll be an Eagle as well, potentially. But that was a lot of leadership development. And so I think the message about service is you don't have to do it on a grand scale. You don't have to be the president of your association. You don't have to be the president of your state association. You just need to be involved at some level that you can make meaningful and touch in that space as well. Sometimes that, love that to be the health information profession. But for me, that was also within scouting. It was weathering some hard times during scouting. And I think that allows me to bring some of that messaging in terms of service as we start to rebuild expectations and connections with membership.
Health information management, but we also, Seth does global mission trips and, a million things. I do some missions here, some different service here in my local area. So service is definitely important. So tell us a little bit about, for being president-elect, being on the ballot, tell us a little bit about what is important to you and also just to the profession or even the external facing partners that we cross segments with. What do you want us to know about what's important about being president of AHIMA?
I think the time is now, and I know everybody says that, right now is the time that's now. But I think, so many things have happened over the last 5 years that have really shown a light on us as professionals. Right. It's the double-edged sword of COVID. But I know during COVID, I had many more conversations about the value of the data and our understanding of the data than I'd ever had before. In the timing of all of the privacy and the security work that's going on. And while it's not wonderful, there are a whole bunch of current events that are going on right now that AHIMA and health information professionals really, I want to say, capitalize on, but they really are at the forefront of that knowledge. So if you think about the Change Healthcare breach that happened to happen when we were at the Advocacy Summit, or was shortly thereafter the Advocacy Summit, and the federal legislatures were trying to get their arms around it, and they wanted us to talk to them about what it meant. And I remember talking to different senators, representatives about it, and them going, "This is really great information. Can we get more information from you?" We have always been that universal translator between the clinical side and the administrative side of healthcare. You look at the cybersecurity pieces that are going on right now. I think we're all watching the DRSI civil lawsuit to see, what's going to happen with these breaches as they continue to happen, and what is our culpability and what damages might be there. The action around patient identification. We sell these wonderful visions of sharing information and having information at a patient's fingertips and at a provider's fingertips. And then there's there's us within the health information profession going, well, that only works if you can link the information. And here are all the things that can go wrong with linking that information and sharing that knowledge with folks, and people really not understanding all of that. I think there's just that broad linking of data in general. We look at social determinants of health, big conversation around financing and having a better understanding that it's not just the acute care episodes that are important to someone's health. It's the long-term care management as we try and improve people's health. I think the other piece, and I really wish this wasn't part of why we're so pertinent right now and why it's so important that we are a strong voice in the community, is around the information sharing restrictions because of some of the legislative overturning of things. I practice in the state of California, and we have laws talking about not sharing reproductive health information, not sharing gender affirming care health information, and being able to kind of put that together. Our IT friends know it from the technical standpoint, but they don't understand the broader context of that. And maybe they do understand it, but they use us for some of that regulatory need. And so it is so important right now that the HIMA and us as a profession continue to leverage our knowledge in that space and to come to the table and to share our knowledge. I think one of the struggles that we've had from a long-term perspective is we tend to be the ones that know the regulations. Right. So when you get invited to the table and they say, hey, you're here, and you're like, okay, well, here are all the regulations. Here are all the things you can't do. Right. we need to very actively as leaders, and I think we've made some strides in the health information profession to say, I know the regulations, right? So I can tell you, the regulations are going to say this, but how do we say no? I always say, you get invited to the table and you say no, you're not going to be invited again. You need to be there and say, how can we do this? Oh, let's look at this. Okay, well, here's a risk, not a no, but here's a risk. I want to educate you on what the risk of the situation is going to be. And then I'm in it with you when, if we say, okay, that risk is worth it, we're going to go down this path. If something goes sideways, I'm still going to be there. I'm not going to stand there and say, I told you so. It's going to be what's better in this space. And I get all worked up in terms of talking about patients' understanding of what their rights are to confidentiality and what patients want, right? So I think a lot of us can agree to that we want our information shared so that we can be treated well, but that's not always the case. And we don't always know what information we've agreed to share. I mean, I'd love to say I read every consent that I sign to the nth degree and But when you all of a sudden go, whoa, where did that come from? And they hold it up in front of you and say, you signed this. I don't think you wouldn't have signed it. But I think, we need to continue to educate on how that information is going to be shared and what's the positive part of that. My perspective changed a little bit in the last year, and it's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about sharing information in that I was a patient. I haven't been a sick person in my life. I had my children in hospitals, and that was about it. And I became very sick. I needed to have a transplant. I needed to go through this process. And I'll tell you, I wanted my information shared. And I sort of chuckled. One of the policies that I was responsible for that I felt very proud of at my organization was that we didn't share real-time lab information or information about you when you were an inpatient. We wanted, we didn't want you seeing that information before your doctor talked to you. And, we were worried about patients not understanding it. And here I lay in a hospital bed. All I wanted to know was my lab results of the blood they just drew out of me. Right. And I remember saying to somebody, wow, man, that's changed my perspective. We do a lot with technology, a lot with Bluetooth, right? So we have this beautiful vitals pump sitting next to my bed that has Bluetooth capability to our EMR, that the Bluetooth wasn't working. And so I watched all of my wonderful support staff who came in and took my vitals, whip out their personal cell phone, take a picture of the vital pump so that they could go outside and enter it into the system. As a patient, I was like, okay, well, they're being creative in how they get it there. Gee, I really wish it worked. As the privacy officer, I'm going, oh God, I really hope they delete that off their phone. But it made it very real. Right. And so I would encourage anybody in our profession, in any profession, when you think about policy or you think about that, hey, I understand the impact of this decision, take a couple more steps to be able to go, okay, wait a minute. We're not releasing this information because we're worried about this, or we are releasing this because of this. Becoming a patient, or even, lots of people have those stories of caring for their parents. If you have aging parents, just lots of things. That information is so key and it's so very important. You have to use the information. You have to use data in a different way when you're making decisions about the services that are being provided. The time is now. I mean, it's all coming together, and we're the ones that can kind of interpret it. And I've always teased with my administration here at Cedars because I've always lived on the finance side, which has wonderful, wonderful benefits, right? And every so often they'll be like, well, hey, we're doing this study and we're trying to apply some clinical aspect to it. And I'm like, you're using financially derived information to make some clinical decisions. So let me tell you the limitations of why that was the DRG that was assigned, or why these were the first codes that were assigned. And let's be a little bit careful about the assumptions we make about the absence or the presence of something in that data. And they're always like, we're really glad that you guys understand that because we don't understand it. And so I think we need to embrace our role. We are those interpreters. We are those people at the table, and we need to take the presence that we have, bring a positive mindset, bring a can-do attitude, and say, here's what I can share with you, and I can help, and I can be at the table to brainstorm some solutions with all of that. Because I think, with any new legislation, with any new changes, there are the unintended consequences. And we tend to be the ones who can kind of go, okay, let's do a little foreshadowing
Very
over here about
good.
what some consequences may be and how we might be able to address those.
Yeah, well, it goes back to the statement that we always say in HIM school is that we're the hub of the wheel, right? Now, we're always at the center of the information, and that's where we are. But as we come to a close here, we want to thank you for the time spent with us so our membership can get to know you a little bit more before the election. We encourage the membership of AHIMA to participate in the vote. And we look forward to seeing how that goes. And we'll be talking here in a few minutes to the next candidate. So thank you again, Thea, for joining us. And stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Well, we're back for the next candidate for president-elect for the upcoming AHIMA election in July. It's going to be very exciting. As a disclaimer, I just want to remind everyone, and Susan, just to inform you that this podcast is completely independent of AHIMA or any of their work groups or any of the governance structure of AHIMA as a whole. And we are representing the THIMA Foundation in HIPcast, and it is for the benefit of our members and our students. So this is completely unordained by any official source. Okay, so this is just our opportunity to get to know you. So just for the listeners, we're back with Susan Clark, who is a candidate for president-elect for AHIMA in this July's election. So welcome, Susan.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
It's exciting to have you here. It's exciting to do this. Again, we mentioned this, I think, in one of the other candidate podcasts. This is our first year doing this, and it's been really fun. It's a new way to learn about the candidates for our membership, to learn who they're going to vote for and get to hear a different voice. And podcasting has become one of those methods that many of us utilize. But we always start with our guest asking the question of, how did you end up in this profession of health information? Tell us about your journey.
I have to start at the beginning. And if you do interact with me on LinkedIn, you often see hashtag Health IT Rockstar, which came from, that was my initial goal in life, was to be a rock star. I was going to, open for Motley Crue. It's all going to work out. Except for that, life changes you. So I started in music. But after a year, I just thought, academically, this is not as fun. So I moved home, had no idea what I wanted to do, and I got a job at our local clinic. So I worked front desk, interacting with the patients, providers, all the workflow, a multi-specialty clinic, and I've never left healthcare like that. I landed in my place, but I also always lead with that story because that's why I'm so passionate about what happens on the ground, the interactions, what it feels like with the persons, what those struggles are. And so while I did continue to go to school. So I went to our local community college for all my gen eds, and just worked. And while working at the clinic too, I love to, just for my own enjoyment, help out in medical records. I know, how crazy is that? I loved filing. Weird. I loved finding misfiles, like that solving the mystery of where'd that chart end up. And so I got really, and what goes in the chart, like prepping the charts for the providers. Do we have all the records for the next day? So kind of all of that lays the foundation of what I still do. So went to community college, graduated there. And ironically, I took some tours I was in Illinois at the time. And at that time, there was only bachelor level HIM programs, still called medical records, I think, in the 90s. One was in Chicago, one was in Bloomington, and I toured both of those programs. I wanted to do that. And with both of them, I was 1 credit short of and I would have to sit out like a whole week because everything was so locked into those semesters, which also then lends to my passion for progressive education, of how can we adapt for people. So I did not. I ended up going to NIU, Northern Illinois, and public health and health administration. So it all has really, because guess what, public health was really important all of a sudden 20 years later. So that it's all landed right where it needed to be. I landed in working in managed care doing provider relations, doing quality review, and actually the best job I ever had, I always tell the students this because I love talking to the students, wasn't as an executive assistant at a physician hospital organization. Because after I left college, at first I thought, I have a degree, I'm going to do cool stuff, I'm going to run the world. And I went, oh, I don't know, that feels like like I'm stepping under. And it was the coolest because I was in every provider meeting, every executive meeting. I was running the accounting. I was, cutting checks for capitation and all the contracts. And so getting to see huge swaths of healthcare in that regard, then a couple of those roles, moved to Indiana. So there's always got to be a guy involved in these stories. There was a guy. We had known each other in high school. We actually took lessons from the same bass guitar teacher. Fun story. Re-met each other, and he lived here. He works for Purdue University, and I moved. Well, I thought, oh, I work in healthcare. I'll get a job. It was not that easy. So started again at the Purdue Student Health Center, working in the business office. I was coding ambulatory visits without training, but I loved it. I loved the code book. So cool. All the tabs. It was, but after doing that for a while, the medical records supervisor job came open. I went, oh, that's what I always wanted to do anyway, which also was medical records, it was patient access, it was all kinds of things. Sorry, I'm talking really long, trying to get to the end. Those are all important because I led my first electronic records implementation there because I said, why do we have paper? And that was before 2010, and I didn't know people weren't really doing it yet. So I guess I'm always like, okay, let's try it. So that was super important. I learned project management from the Purdue PMO project management office, and then moved to Regional Extension Center when Meaningful Use came out. That's where I learned how policy intersects with all the healthcare and payment systems. And so I'm trying to speed up consulting, HIPAA, lots of HIPAA compliance. There you go. Am I doing okay?
Doing perfect.
State government. So I ended up in state government because of the experience in meaningful use, because there was a big Medicaid component to that. So I ended up working in state government around how do we do health IT for our providers. Folks in state government have no idea what it's like on the outside world, outside of Medicaid claims. And so developing those strategies, and that's where I got the relationships with health information exchanges. How does this work? I had just such a fortunate experience of diverse settings. Like I just keep falling into new spaces. So then as of October, I work for now a standards organization, which is also a trade alliance, which is also a cybersecurity accreditation company. So we all just keep growing, right? Like what?
It's a journey.
Yeah,
it truly is.
I couldn't have made this up. I just had this conversation because my husband's nephew is about to finish college, and he's having this panic, like, I want to go to grad school. What am I going to do with the rest of my life? I'm like, you can't know. You can't know. Just start. Just go out there and start.
That's right. That's right. Well, excuse me. Sorry about that. It's a fascinating journey. And yes, it's always a journey. So fun, right? Never bored. We're never bored. I've never talked to a health information professional who says, that's been in the career for a long time, that says, I'm bored. I've been bored consistently with my career because there's so many changes, right? So Susan, thank you for that. It's nice that we get to know things about you that we didn't know, and the membership listening who will make a decision on you and the other candidate that came before you in this interview. We'll get to hear both sides and get to know you both a little. And so now that we know a little bit about you and your health information journey, can you tell us a little bit about what is the importance of being president-elect and then president and past president? So maybe the life cycle of being elected to AHIMA to represent and be the face of AHIMA. What's the importance of that for the association, the profession, and the members?
I love that question. So many prongs to pull at. That So President-elect coming in will be, most importantly, understanding what's already happening. But maybe I'll step back just a smidge, that I didn't really highlight in my journey how long I've been volunteering. So when I first had that medical record supervisor job, I also went back to school, which is how I did get an HIM degree, and the certification. I kind of left out one of the most important parts. Duh.
That matters.
That's why I'm here. I care about this industry and its certifications. But I also, at that time, because the clinic I was at didn't really think of that position as what it needed to be. So eventually I left it as a director position, but I need a community. And still Google existed by then, and who's out there. And I found out that, oh my gosh, there's an association I can learn from. Oh, there's more certifications I should have. So I started volunteering at our regional level, community level, so regional to state. So this is important because as I moved up in the state leadership, getting to experience as a delegate, as a state president, going to leadership symposiums, so interacting with all of their other, like our friends in Tennessee. I always love seeing them at all of the events. Always great voices. That was an important part to experience the organization. Also served on the nominating committee, and one of my favorite roles was chair of Advocacy and Policy Council. So I've had the opportunity to see how the whole organization fits together. So that's why it feels like now I'm ready to move into actually working with the whole organization end to end. So it'll be a significant amount of understanding where we're at, because you don't want to come in and just be like, hey, let's do all these things, and everyone's like, we're already doing those. So I need to understand, where are we? It's like a gap in, I was a consultant, and even still today in a lot of the work we do, always got to have a gap analysis. So I did have, during the nominating process to get here, a really good glimpse at the next strategic plan coming out. It's beautiful. So this is why I would normally have said, oh, here's these things I would like to advocate for. And I was so excited that it's already happening. I mean, these are not, I didn't make up an idea that didn't already exist. It's how can I then take it even further? With some of those concepts being and then so president-elect year, learning, understanding, and starting to get your voice of being a leader, and getting comfortable with who are my players, who are my audiences between the board, the delegates, the state, the CAs as they are now, and then our outside partners. So, and the staff. So AHIMA is an organization that we need to lean upon. We've just got a really excellent new VP, if you haven't seen that post, for academics. So this is an exciting time. So establishing that, I think some of the other things that will then come in the president role, and where I shine, are the relationships and the awareness building. So one of the things I always say I do is connect people, process, technology, ideas. And you will find in the next iteration of the strategic plan that was very much in there. And I went, that's what I always say. This is great. So I'm going to keep doing that, which means looking outside of AHIMA itself too, to who are the best partners, who are the best working with our policy folks. So from legislative, other organizations, other parts of the industries, and all from the sort of the aspect of what I think is the tricky part of a member organization, and especially now that I've worked in one for a while. You have a very delicate balance of serving the members as they are, where they are, bringing value. What's that value look like? Which is why I'm also very excited about the member survey that's out right now. So if any of your listeners haven't taken it, if it's still out I don't remember the end date, but please do. It takes a couple minutes, but your voice is so important. So where are we now? How do we help people in their current role? But I think also my advantage to working so much in technology, working so much in policy, and just in the last year, more global aspects too, and more parts of the industry, research and government and all the things that, so it's meeting members where they are, but how do we help them know where to be in the future? So that's really important to me, is we want to give a pathway to excel. And I think the skill sets, the core skill sets that remain, are in HIM from end to end of the many, many different professional paths we can take, are right at the center of everything for healthcare delivery and technology and all the other pieces. So how do we create more pathways and lift up our floor of where our people can be? So that's that delicate space.
That's great and very thorough. Thank you for that. Could you take just maybe, I don't know, a minute and a half to 2 minutes and talk a little bit about, if you've been around very long at all for health information management and you've been involved at any level of volunteerism, you probably understand that we've had some hills and valleys in relationship between AHIMA, the organization, the AHIMA board of directors, the House of Delegates, and the membership. So we've had some really great times and we've had some pretty low times. And could you talk a little bit about what would be some innovative or creative ways to start to turn or repair some of that and rebuild some trust and be more collaborative than separate and distinct components of that whole flow?
The first word that comes into my head is presence. So how do we have, for me, for other members of the organization, all directions, but how do we be present and more of where those conversations are happening in the house or with the component associations, where are the struggles, being present with the AHIMA staff, being present with the board. So I know we send folks to represent AHIMA to all the component association meetings, but it needs to be more, not just a, hey, we're going to come tell you what we're doing. How do we make that more of a interactive story? What's this conversation like? And maybe a little bit more, I think part of what has missed, and now that I've had some opportunities in my life, having been had my own business, had my own experience in government, and what's the hardest when there are changes or there are things we want to deliver, that trying to really give a good explanation of how did we get here, and not just have something handed out. You can't just drop things on people and expect them to go, great, like that sounds wonderful. Wait, where'd that come from? So I think just messaging, there's a lot with messaging, value proposition, both, and that's an internal. So value proposition to the outward world, I mentioned, but what's the value inside? And we have to do a better job of being present in representation, I think is the word I want, interactively.
Very good.
Well, the future is bright for AHIMA with all of our candidates, I believe. I think that I'm excited to see the strategic plan. I've not seen it, so I'm excited for when that comes out. I've heard a lot of people talk about it and the excitement around it, but we are excited about the fact that the election is coming up for president. So we encourage all the members that listen to this podcast to participate in the AHIMA election. It's a very important part of being a member. That's how your voice is heard, amongst other ways. So we encourage everyone to vote in the upcoming election in July. So Susan, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We appreciate you raising your hand and saying that you'll volunteer and be nominated and run for an elected position. I've done it in the past. It's always a fun challenge to throw on top of everything else you're doing. So
not bored. And please reach out if people aren't sure, didn't get what they needed from this, like, you can reach out to me. I'm very, very personable, and I love to get engaged and hear what the questions really are.
Absolutely. Well, good. Well, thank you very much, Shannan. Until next time, my friend.
See you next time. This was fun.